What's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with another fight breakdown. This weekend, Christian Mbilli, one of the top rising stars at 168. He's going to be facing off against the seasoned Sergey Derevyanchenko. The fight will be on ESPN Plus, 8 p.m. Eastern, and I should be doing live commentary for this fight this weekend. Should be a pretty good fight. It's a good matchup. And I believe this is the first time I actually did a breakdown for Christian Mbilli. I've never done a breakdown. I've watched plenty of his fights, and I was able to do some good film study this week and go back to watching some of his older fights. But this is a pretty good matchup. I know not huge names. Sergey is, he's 38 years old at this point. He's been in a lot of wars, but you never can really sleep on him because you look at his record and he's got 15 wins with 5 losses, and people are going to see that right away and say, oh, this should be an easy fight. It was never an easy fight for anyone else. Not Danny Jacobs, not Triple G, not Carlos Adames or Jamel Charlo, and definitely not for Jaime Munguia, which was one of the better fights, one of the best fights in 2022. All right. So it's a good scrap. All right. Again, not big names, but it should be a fun fight this weekend. All right. Let's start out with Mbilli. All right. Since I never really covered him for a fight before, probably covered him on like some undercards on some doing live commentary, but I've never done a breakdown with him before. So French fighter, 29 years old, very, very aggressive style. Okay. Super. It kind of reminds me of Ruslan Paratnikov a little bit, very, very powerful, high volume, lots of pressure, and very explosive. He has been going on a tearing spree, just stopping every opponent. And no, he has not fought any of the super big names in the division. All right, but he did beat Carlos Gongora. I went to decision with him, but it was a pretty good fight, a pretty good win because Gongora is definitely a solid fighter at the division. And, he picked up some recent wins. All right. So one of the fights, which was a brutal fight, but it's pretty entertaining. If you haven't seen it, definitely go back and watch the Rohan Murdoch fight. I remember watching that fight. Not sure if it was on an undercard or anything, but I remember watching it that week. And this is a fight that I would go back to if you want to see how brutal Mbilli is. He's very, very aggressive and so powerful, so physically strong. And Damon Nicholson is another fight, if you want to see what he's really made of. Nicholson was recently in the ring with Demetrius Andrade. And he's been in the ring with, he's like a guy that's been in there, a respectable journeyman that's been in there with a lot of fighters on a come up. He also been in there with Edgar Berlanga and went the distance with him. Okay. So definitely go back, check those out. Carlos Gongora, I think it was probably his most competitive fight, but Carlos is a southpaw and he has a different style than Sergey Derevyanchenko, much bigger fighter, big guy, was able to have some sort of control over Mbilli, the very powerful Mbilli, push him and keep him off balance at times. All right, but the greatest strengths of Mbilli here is definitely his power and just his brute, vicious approach. Once he has you on the ropes, he's throwing bombs, big hooker, just big power. He's trying to destroy you, to completely dominate you. Very, very aggressive approach in his style. So definitely got to check him out. I think most of the times, he fights out of a high guard, not all of the time, but most of the time. And he's pretty good at getting low, dunking underneath shots, countering, setting high guard traps, making it seem like he's being defensive, but he's waiting for you to try to punch through the guard or punch around the guard so he can counter quickly with the hook and then get inside you and just rough you up. And he clearly has a big size advantage. I think Sergey has always been a smaller guy. Fought at 160, has fought at 168, but Sergey is always for the most part, had the size disadvantage for most of the fighters he's fought in his career, especially the top tier guys. But that's when he's usually showing up. All right. But those are the strengths of Christian. Now, as far as his weaknesses, when you're this aggressive as a fighter, now I compared him to Ruslan Provodnikov earlier in this video, defensive holes, leaky defense is usually the case, being aggressor, being a pressure fighter that he is, doesn't have the great defense, doesn't have the greatest balance, doesn't have the quickest feet. I'm putting my notes here that he has a very, for a guy that likes to step in and be close range, mid range, and just like throw a bunch of hooks, right? Throws a lot of hooking combinations. He's always kind of like 90% of the time in a bladed stance. And I think that leaves him open, or one of the ways it keeps him open, because it gets him thrown, especially when he throws hook from the backhand. He kind of like twists his whole body, instead of just standing more squared. Like a Mike Tyson. You see Mike Tyson, you see clips of him standing squared and he's stuck in underneath. He's coming up with hooks. Mbilli's always standing in like a bladed stance, and he's hooking, he's swinging his whole body around, and his lead hand is normally down. So it keeps him in a position where he can get countered, or it keeps him in a position where he's not getting as much leverage. You know what I mean? Because he should probably square up a little better as far as his feet. And, it will make his hooks a little bit more compact and shorter and more powerful, because he'll have more leverage. And I think that's a big thing. Like, as I watch his fights, and I think he's improving. I think you see him most in a Gongora fight, but as I watch the fights after, like the DeMont Nicholson fight, or, the Murdoch fight and stuff, I've seen he's improving a little bit, but I still want to say like 80% of the time, he's always in a bladed stance when he's hooking with the backhand. And I think that can give him balance issues, Also, when he's hooking, his chin is kind of up, is exposed. So it can leave counterpunch opportunities, especially with a guy like Sergey Derevyanchenko, who's used to go to wars like with bigger fighters and guys that try to, outwork him and outpressure him. Derevyanchenko is very, very sneaky in the counterpunching, area. So this can definitely give Mbilli problems in this fight. All right. Especially when he's stepping in. He's coming in very aggressive. He does his best work when you're like standing right in front of him, not necessarily when you're moving. Okay. So if you're moving, you can give him some issues. But if you're standing right in front of him, or your back is against the ropes, that's what he does. That's when he's having the most success. But as he's walking you down, not many jabs. He'll stab you with a jab to the body here and there. But for the most part, he's overextending with his, backhand and lunging at times. That also leaves him, there to get countered. You know what I mean? So not much feigning. Those are the issues that I have with Christian. I think he's very good and he's very powerful and stuff. But when it comes to him getting close, especially with a guy like Derevyanchenko in this fight, it could be problematic for him, especially because Sergey is very, very athletic. Even at his age, at 38, there's almost a tenured age gap between these two. Sergey is probably still, watching his fights in the last couple of years, is still probably a more overall a more athletic fighter, and he's a lot more technically sound, has better fundamentals and stuff like that, better defender. All right. So that's my overview on Christian Mbilli. Now we got Sergey Derevyanchenko again. Don't look at the record. This was an amateur, a phenomenal amateur who came in starting to fight some of the top tier fighters right away. All right. So when you see the amount of losses he has, you got to look at who he lost to: Adames, Charlo, Triple G, Danny Jacobs, and even Jaime Munguia, which was a very, very close fight. I mean, all of these fights were very close. I think Jamel Charlo was the only fighter that he's fought that, like, clearly won, even though that fight was still very competitive. I still to this thing think that's Jamel Charlo's best performance. I think everybody else that Derevyanchenko lost to, he only lost by a round or a knockdown that impacted the scoring of the fight. So Sergey is still a live dog to me, especially if he is to not just go straight into a war with Christian. If he decides to utilize the ring a little bit more, and counter, you know what I mean, and use some of those ambush tactics that we known to have. He has the hand speed advantage. You know, his punches are a lot shorter and more compact. He has the foot speed advantage. You know, he's good at moving and utilizing the ring, changing directions. Also, good jabber. Not along again. He doesn't have the reach advantage here, but from the outside, he's more of a guy that's gonna fight behind a jab, and great speed. So he's able to close distance very quickly and ambush you. And even on the inside, he's able to smother his opponent. So if Mbilli is, having balance issues and he's just trying to swing, hooks, and if he's being sloppy with it, Sergey can counter and connect on the inside with some of those shorter, more compact hooks on the inside, especially using those angles. He's a Ukrainian fighter that moves extremely well. So he could step around his opponents, pivot really good. Those are the keys for Derevyanchenko as far as like being the older fighter here, but also being the more athletic and more experienced fighter. I mean, he's fought the better competition between these two, I know Christian is a career 168, and I know Derevyanchenko has been mostly, for the most part, most of his tougher fights were at 160. But Derevyanchenko is, a guy that has experience in this fighting guys that's much bigger and more powerful than him. Sergey is not a huge puncher, but he has sneaky power. You gotta like he's hurt guys like a Munguia. He hurt Triple G to the body. You know what I mean? You can't sleep on this guy at all. All right. All right, and he has great conditioning. I have my notes here just in case I forget anything. Well conditioned. I mean, again, he is getting older. He is 38 years old now. So how long is he gonna really go? But I think the biggest key with him is he has heart. He has great heart. And going into the weaknesses, not the most durable fighter. And what I mean by that is when I say is that he can't take a punch. Not that he can't take the punch. It's just that he gets knocked down in a lot of his fights when at crucial moments, like the Jaime Munguia get knocked down late. I believe in the Triple G. I don't want to mix them up because I know in Danny Jacobs, he got knocked down, but I can't remember what point in the fight he got knocked down. But against Triple G, fight was close. He got knocked down. Danny Jacobs, fight was close. Got knocked down. Jaime Munguia, fight was close. Got knocked down again. So there are crucial moments where he gets dropped. And there's times where he just gets hurt and buzzed by a shot. But he has great recovery. So if you do knock him down or you do buzz him, he knows how to use that experience and tie up when he needs to or move when he has to just recalibrate and get it back together. You know what I mean? He does recover quickly, but he does get hurt. All right. Again, the knockdowns is what caused him to lose fights on points before. He's never been stopped before. Okay. Size disadvantage, always brought that up. Clearly in this fight here, he has a huge size disadvantage here because Christian Mbilli is more powerful. I mean, he's not that much bigger, but when you see them stand and face off, you can see like the arms, the shoulders, not much of a height gap between them, but there's a reach gap and there's an overall size gap between them. And plus, he's 38 years old, so and then he has a history of just losing the close fights. He just doesn't get the nod for the really close fights. So going into like exactly what, I think the fighters need to do. I think Christian needs to apply pressure, but when he's on the outside, be smart getting in, not lunging from the outside. Do your work when you close the gap on Derevyanchenko. Try to make him fight your fight. You don't want Dev to use his technique and movement, for too long. You want to close the gap. You want to try to force him to fight your fight, invite him into a slugfest, because even if Dev has success there, you are the bigger, stronger fighter, the younger fighter, and you most likely your punches may have more of an impact on Derevyanchenko than the other way around. So I think for Christian, just be smart when it comes to closing distance, okay? And also when you're trading and you're throwing combinations, keep that other hand up, keep that free hand up, duck underneath some of those punches, watch out for the counter. Just don't be sloppy and reckless. Christian has been rocked before. He did get not dropped, but he got hurt from an uppercut in the Carlos Gongora fight. Who is a southpaw, but Carlos was able to land that uppercut continuously in his fight. And I'm sure Sergey is gonna, even though he's in a righty, he's gonna be paying attention to that. All right, and then for Sergey, use the experience, use the movie, use the ring. Do not stay on the ropes for too long. Sergey weakness, he just kind of gets invited to the war sometime when you are clearly the superior boxer. You're not the bigger guy, you're not the bigger puncher. So use the ring, you know what I mean? Don't run, but use the ring, use that foot speed advantage you have, and pick spots to ambush, throw your flurries, and then get back on a move. Like stick and move, duck underneath, counter, use the jab, feint, you know what I mean? Throw off the momentum of Christian, you know what I mean, in this fight, and push it. Like, not expecting a knockout from Derevyanchenko. If anyone gets stopped, it would be Derevyanchenko, but he has enough power to hurt anyone. You know what I mean? He has enough power to at least gain the respect of any opponents. And you have the superior in boxing, so use it. As far as my prediction, I'm expecting Christian to win. I just can't pick Derevyanchenko to win simply because he always, it's just history, always losing the close ones. And even though styles make fights, Christian too strong, too powerful. And Sergey always tends to get into wars, and he's been through so many of them. And this is why I have to pick Christian, even though, he's the favorite to win. I have to go with the favorite to win. Not exactly sure if it will be by knockout. Again, I think a lot of that depends on Sergey. Because he does have heart, and he is pretty durable, even though he gets knocked down, he always gets up and continues. Christian is a different beast, and if he really ends up getting into a slugfest, I just think Christian would be a bad fighter to get into that kind of fight with. Jaime Munguia, I know he's like a slugger and he has power and he likes to fight, but I think Christian is a lot more dangerous in that area. Triple G, a lot, big puncher, a lot more calculated with his pressure and his power. But Sergey was a lot younger at that time. You know what I mean? Sergey used the ring and his movement and to throw off Triple G and his timing. It really depends on what Sergey does. I don't think he's going to win, but I think he could have a lot of success in the fight if he continues to fight smart. I just feel like for him to win, he has to be nearly perfect. And this is why I'm picking against him. So I'm picking Christian to win. I'm leaning more to the decision. Even though Christian is a beast, I'm leaning more to a decision. But I think if there is a stoppage, I'm expecting it to be in the later rounds. I think it would be because Derevyanchenko has taken too much punishment, and his face always blow. His eyes are gonna be swollen after a few punches. You know what I mean? That's what we see in every fight. So I got Christian Mbilli winning. As far as the betting goes, I'm probably gonna sit this one out because I don't know exactly how he's gonna win. I'd have to think a little bit more on it and sleep on it. But I have Christian winning the fight. I think it's gonna be a really good matchup, a really good fight. I mean, Sergey's always in good fights when he's fighting top tier fighters. But I got Christian winning this one. All right. So anyway, I'll let you know if I'll try to be here Saturday to do live commentary for this fight. Again, it's on ESPN Plus at 8 p.m. Eastern, and decent on the card. No real standout fights. All right, but I'll see you Saturday. Hopefully, please subscribe to the channel. Please hit the thumbs up. Share the video if you like the content. And I'm out of here. Y'all have a good one. Peace.